It's been hard because I'm, trying to juggle so many things, and life doesn't stop just because you've got to write a PhD thesis, right? In fact, in many ways, life accelerates because you have to do it at the same time as the PhD is coming to an end. So you've got to find a job, you've probably got to move house. I've got a lot of family stuff going on at the moment as well, which is, making things hard. And so life just doesn't stop so that you can sit down and write a PhD thesis. This is my home. Welcome to my home, Brady. It's an old Victorian lunatic asylum, so pretty apt for me, I would say. My 3-year-old nephew thinks I own the whole thing. He always comes and visits, and he's like, "Can we go and play in the rest of it, Uncle James?" I'm like, "No." I got a small flat just over there. That's mine, which I'm going to take you into. I'm here working. This is where I'm spending the majority of my time now, just trying to get my thesis finished. It's a good working environment. And it's quiet, and most of all, I'm not distracted by being in the lab because the temptation is enormous to put down the thesis and go and do some more new physics. But I can't do that right now. I've got to finish, and so here I am. What I've got here is what I hope is going to be my PhD thesis. So I've just got back from 3 weeks in Cornwall, where I've locked myself away in a dark room, my girlfriend's cottage, writing furiously bits and pieces for a PhD. I like to hand write my work because it allows me time to think about it when I'm writing it. Yeah, it really felt like I'd nearly finished last time we spoke. I felt like I got all the results in place and we were good to go, and I was pleased with what I've written. And then, when was that? That must have been about September. And then we made a big new discovery, and the whole back end of my thesis has changed completely since then. So I have 2 new chapters. The earlier chapters, the focus of those has changed. I've just had to rewrite the whole thing, basically.
At what point do you stop? Do you say no more, the door is closed, I'm now writing this thesis no matter what new information we find?
About 3 weeks ago is the answer to that. You're right, yeah, you've got to stop. You can't just keep going and going and going, because there is always something new to discover. And so, yeah, I've literally just slammed the door and said, I'm going to finish what I've got, I'm going to write it up, make it look pretty, and we're going to call it quits.
Do you get a lot of jokes about living in a mental asylum, and how apt is it for your current state of mind?
Oh, well, right now I'm just completely lost. I'm gone. I feel like I'm in the right place, and sometimes I wonder when the men in white coats are going to show up. Where do you go? Oh, you're there.
All right.
I bought it a decade ago now, thinking that it would help limit how much time I spent sitting at the computer if I had a less comfortable chair. And it turns out it's really comfy. Well, this is what I showed you before. This was my handwritten thesis. I haven't looked at it for a while, actually. But you can see I had all my scrawly notes back when I wasn't quite sure what I was trying to say. There's a couple of new chapters since you last saw it. I got to the point where I was just writing on the back of anything. This is great. This is me writing my thesis on scrap paper that my girlfriend uses for teaching primary. So she teaches 6-year-olds, the 3 little pigs. And then I use it to write, what have I written on this one? I use it to write about the hydrodynamic description of gases. So I think it's a really nice juxtaposition of the 2 extremes of education. And of course what it's about is the research that I've spent the last 3 years doing. And that research is into the way that gas particles move. So the thesis is the exam at the end of a PhD. Essentially what I'm trying to do is convey everything I've learned to somebody who's never met me before, who's going to come and give me an exam. So this is just my opportunity to show off the original research that I've done and print some pretty pictures and say, this is everything I know about this subject.
When I was at school, if I had to write an essay or something, the teacher would say, I want 1,500 words, or I want 2 pages, and that. How much information are you given about what you have to present in this document?
I found that to be one of the hardest things, right? Nobody tells you what you've got to produce. There's a library full of them, right? I've got some examples, right? There's a library full of beautiful bound PhD theses like this. And you think, okay, I can do that. Yeah, makes perfect sense. And then you try and do it for yourself. And it's so much harder. You think, oh, well, actually, no, I can't do that.
What's so hard?
You have to be really concise. And I'm not good at that in the first place. And you can't just waffle on about stuff that everybody already knows. So what you have to do is extract the essence of what you've learned and put it down in a way that shows it in a logical order. And then the hard part, I suppose, is that you've got to try and keep the reader interested. Okay, this is really dry material. So you have to try and explain why it's exciting. I know it's exciting. I spent 3 years studying it. But you wouldn't find it exciting just skipping through because you don't understand the fine details, what it's all about.
But you're not writing for a mainstream audience. You don't have to make it exciting for me. Don't you only have to make it exciting for other people who are as immersed in physics as you are?
Yeah, thank God for that. If I had to make it exciting for you, I'd really struggle. The simple reason why a PhD is hard is because we're not in this business to sit writing. We're in this business to do experiments and to discover new cool stuff and to play with cool toys and to talk about physics with people who love talking about physics. And so that's the first reason. This is not what I want to do. I don't think it's really what anybody wants to do. How on earth people write physics textbooks is a mystery to me. It's been hard because I'm trying to juggle so many things, and life doesn't stop just because you've got to write a PhD thesis, right? In fact, in many ways, life accelerates because you have to do it at the same time as the PhD is coming to an end. So you've got to find a job, you've probably got to move house. I've got a lot of family stuff going on at the moment as well, which is, making things hard. And so life just doesn't stop so that you can sit down and write a PhD thesis. On the contrary. And so I'm up till the wee small hours getting this done, and I'm just so tired. And yeah, it is hard. The supervisors, and I think you have to realise that they've all been through this, and they say, you've got to be selfish now, James. You've got to go and just do this. And I get that. I just don't find it an easy thing to do. And I find myself saying things like, I haven't spent 7 years working towards this to muck it up now. And some days it really feels like I'm mucking it up, and I'm not. I'm doing it all right. It just takes so damn long.
You've been doing this for years now.
Mm-hmm.
You know it quite well.
Yes.
You're passionate about it.
Sometimes.
I would have thought if there's something you had to write about, this would be one of the easier things to have to write about.
The first draft was easy, right? That's the point. I think I wrote down the first draft. It took a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. The second draft, I didn't include any figures in the second draft. So can I show you? So there are pages in my thesis which just look like this. They're just waiting for me to produce some images to put into them, right? It was easy getting to this stage, but actually when you have to make that diagram and make it look nice, and I'm doing ridiculous things like thinking, oh, well, I want all my diagrams to have a coherent color scheme so that it doesn't jar when you're reading through it. What? Suddenly I'm into feng shui, or no, it's not what I wanted to do.
James, why don't you do this? And why don't other PhD students do this as they go along? Why do you always end up doing it at the end? Wouldn't have been more efficient to have written the chapters as things unfolded rather than this kind of last minute rush you guys always seem to do?
Okay, so my supervisor said that to me when I started, and I find myself saying that to new PhD students. I say, no, really seriously, you want to keep everything. And I did. Look, I have books full of it here. And I've got all of the information which I've written down as I've gone along, and it's a mess, but it's all there, right? So I really felt like I was keeping on top of it. But it's all been so fast. Like the last 3 years have gone by in a blink. And the other thing, the big thing that changes is that when you start, right, day one, here we are, day one. I didn't have a clue what I was doing when I wrote this. I didn't get the project. I didn't know where it was going. I was completely bemused. Whereas now, I understand all of this. I understand how it fits into the bigger picture. And so it's easy for me to sit down now and say, oh, it'd be lovely to have that diagram because that tells this particular story. But I don't know what's going to tell the relevant story at the start. You only know that when you've finished in reality. I don't think at any point this has had me in tears yet, but I've certainly been in my supervisor's office, head in hands. So, oh, Mike, what am I going to do? I think about a year in, we'd done a whole bunch of experiments. I didn't get it. I didn't see where the excitement was in this physics. And I had to really sort of get back to the fundamental stuff and start reading around the subject. And we did some maths quite recently, actually, which really just revealed the whole thing to me and made it so much more interesting. And suddenly I thought, yeah, now I see how my work fits into this much bigger picture. And I say, right, okay, so this is physics, and here's my bit here, and that's quite a nice feeling, actually.
Give me some dates, give me some times, so I can come back and say, have you finished?
When am I going to finish? Is that what you want to know? Oh, that's such a mean question. I feel like I can have all of these diagrams done in a couple of weeks now. That would be consistent with how long it's taken me to do the ones I've done so far. And so I then go through and put those in, and almost certainly there'll be nice little snippets that I'd forgotten about in those papers which need putting in, so that's probably another couple of weeks. That's the point when my money runs out, interestingly. So after that, I'm just somebody who's unemployed doing this for fun. Great.
What are you going to do?
I thought I might cry. And then after that, this is going to sound pitiful, but there's a company down the street who they box quiches. So I'm probably going to go and work a couple of days a week boxing quiches. Food in a box. It's a factory.
It's like manual labour?
Yeah. It's only temporary. It's never been my aspiration to do this. And it's by no means guaranteed. But if it helps me pay the bills, I'd rather be working than running up a debt. Well, let's start with the simple stuff, right? My plumbing keeps disintegrating. I'm spending a lot of time plumbing at the moment. It's not helpful right now for my shower to be breaking. Look around, right? We're in my bedroom. Welcome to my bedroom, people. This is not ideal. I have a lovely study next door, and that, if I had a choice, would be where I'd be working. But at the moment, my dad is ill, and he's living with us. And that's emotional for all of us. It's really a struggle, mostly for my dad, let's be honest. So we're getting on with that, and is there anybody who's going through the same thing, then I can extend my sympathy, because it's hard. At the start of my thesis, my mother died, and that was hard. And my thesis is well, I intend it to be dedicated to her, and so. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of emotions which, when you're tired and stressed and out of a job, really come to the fore. And yeah, I'm feeling like I have to be on top of it all of the time. Otherwise, I'd be defeated by it straight away. So I'm all right, don't worry. I am on top of it. But yeah, it's an emotional time. I think that's the way it is.
To end on a positive, though,
let's do that.
you must sometimes think about what you hope will happen that moment you finish and you pass your Viva, and I finally will call you Dr. Clewett.
No, that's meant to be a positive finishing point. I can tell from the tone in your voice. But as it is, we've messed up the funding for my job, and so I have no job for 6 months. So I was all excited because I was, as I said, outside. I was going to get on with the next bit of the research, but still have to pay the bills, so maybe more quiche packing. In the last year, I have really internalised it, and it's really just become about knowing the physics. And I would be lying if I said I didn't give a monkeys about being Dr. Clewett, but it's just not what it's about for me anymore. I just want to do a really good job of this. It's so hard to think beyond Viva Day, because this just fills your head, right? Everything about this fills your head, and then somebody says to you, well, you know, what's next? And you think, I just want to sleep.